All right, we're on mini lesson 1.3D. What are the states of matter? So by the end of this, you'll be able to identify solid, liquid, and gases by comparing the motion of the atoms, the structure, and the volume of the substance. You'll be able to also describe how temperature affects the motion of atoms. And your vocabulary is state of matter, solid, liquid, and gas. So what are the states of matter? So there's 3 states of matter. There's solid, there's liquid, and there's gas. So how they change between these different states of matter is by adding heat and adding temperature. So if you look at this simulation here, if you look, we're at 0 degrees Celsius, and you see this is a solid. It's pretty rigid, and then I'm going to add heat to it. And as I add heat to it, you see that the molecules start moving what? Faster, right? They're moving faster. So around here, some of it's liquid, but now some of it's starting to turn into a gas. See how some of the molecules are floating up? So those are turning into gas. You can see as I'm adding more heat, they're separating more, they're moving faster, they're flying up into the air. So as you add heat, it makes it move from a solid liquid to a gas. And now, if I start cooling it down rapidly, you'll see that they start to move slower. They start to come down closer to the ground. They're moving slower and slower. And then eventually, they're all back to that really rigid shape of a solid. All right, now we're looking at each one. So what is a solid? All right, you just kind of saw it with that simulation, but a solid has a rigid shape. It has a definite shape. So definite meaning you for sure see what it is. So we've got this cube here, which is ice, as a definite shape, right? We know what the shape is. It's a cube. Sorry, my drawing skills aren't that great on here on the computer. So it has a definite shape. It has a definite volume. So that volume isn't changing. And then those molecules are moving slow. So if you remember from that simulation, they're moving just ever so slightly. They're not as fast as it was when it was the liquids or gases. All right, so now what is a liquid, right? We've added heat to it, and the solid has turned into a liquid. So those atoms are close-ish, but they're more fluid. They can move more freely. They're not rigid like they are here with the solid. They take the shape of their container, right? So if you take a glass of water, that water is taking the shape of the container. If you pour it into a bowl, it's going to take the shape of that bowl now. The volume is definite, so the volume isn't going to change. And remember, those molecules are moving faster now. As you add heat, they start to move faster and faster. So slow for solid, faster for liquid. And now let's look at gas. So for a gas, remember those atoms are really far away, bouncing around, and they could move easily. They were fluid. They take the shape of their container, right? Because remember when we added heat to it? Let's look at it again. When we added that heat to it, it started to expand and take the shape of this container. So I'm adding heat. You see they're moving faster and faster. They're separating. And right, they start to expand and move far away from each other. Rather than them just settling on the bottom, they are now expanding and taking the shape of this container. See, now they've expanded to take the shape of a container. You can also think about this with like a balloon, right? If you had a balloon and you put water in it, it would just kind of fall to the bottom. But if you put helium in it, it's going to expand and fill up that entire balloon. All right, continuing with gas. So we just looked up how the volume was changing. That volume was increasing with the size of the container. And then you saw that they were moving super fast. So remember, we just talked about solubility with the last lesson. And we talked about how temperature affects solubility, affects the ability for something to dissolve. So you can kind of take your knowledge from what you just learned about solids, liquids, and gases and apply it here. So remember, when the gas heated up, it started to go farther and farther and farther away, right? It's harder to keep it in there and keep it in whatever solvent it's in. Because when you heat gases up, they move faster and farther away from each other. You can't contain it in that solvent. But with solid and water, it easily stays in there, easily stays in that container. All right, so in summary, we have our solid here. We look at what it looks like, our water example. The atoms are rigid and structured, and they move pretty slowly. And then for our liquid, it takes the shape of its container, so it's just like on a surface, so it's just a blob. But if it was in a cup, it would take the shape of that cup. The atoms are farther away and move more fluidly. It moves faster than solid, and then gas. Our gas floats up into the air because they are moving so rapidly, so it's moving the fastest.